Hi, I'm Allen Shoup. For the last 25 years, I've been making wine and promoting the Columbia Valley. But in that time, I've grown to realize the Columbia Valley is a story that you really have to see for yourself.
The character of a wine depends on the grapes from which it is made. The quality of those grapes, in turn, depends on the soil and the mesoclimates where they are grown. The French have a name for this mysterious relationship between a region and its wines: terroir. As you get acquainted with the Columbia Valley's distinctive wines, and the more you know about the unique terroir, the better you will be able to appreciate the subtle but crucial nuances that set the Columbia Valley apart from the rest of the world's vineyards. This incredible story begins some 20,000 years ago at the end of the last great ice age. An incredible event, thought to be the world's greatest flood, occurred in today's northwestern United States. A huge glacier dammed the Clark Fork River in northern Idaho, creating glacial Lake Missoula. This 2,000-foot deep lake backed up almost to the Continental Divide. Geologist Allen Shoup explains it this way.
19,000 years ago, the ice dam just cataclysmically failed, and that was blown away and just swept away in an instant, letting that 500 cubic miles of water begin its travel to the Pacific Ocean, and flowing 60 or 70 miles an hour with icebergs, chunks of the failed glacier swept along in the water, chunks of glacial ice that we can only imagine as being maybe up to a quarter of a mile or even more in diameter, carrying hundreds of tons of huge boulders.
On the raging 430-mile journey to the Pacific Ocean, the floodwaters obliterated everything in their path and forever altered the landscape. All vegetation and topsoil was stripped from the valleys and mountainsides. Bedrock was picked apart and pulverized. An immense channel system was carved across eastern Washington, leaving great scars of black rock known as scabland that remain barren to present day. When the floods encountered Lulu Gap, they slowed briefly and formed the gigantic but temporary Lake Lulu. At its height, Lulu was 800 feet deep and covered what today we call the Columbia Valley. Vast as it was, Lake Lulu existed mere days before the floods cleared the gap and rushed onwards, widening and deepening the Columbia Valley Gorge 140 miles downstream. But in those few days, massive amounts of alluvial deposits settled out of the floodwaters, literally laying the foundation for the deep, well-drained, lush soils of the Columbia Valley, which includes both the Yakima and Walla Walla Valley, that unique place where Vitis vinifera thrives.
When the ice dam burst and huge amounts of that sediment were swept away, it was carried by water. And then in the 10 or 15,000 years since the end of the last ice age, that glacial rock flour has been picked up and moved by the wind and formed into the lush soils that we have. Wind as a factor in our Northwest geology and our Northwest climate has been so important in picking up and eroding and carrying dust clouds, carrying sand sheets out around the area, so that we have soils which oftentimes have flood materials in the lower part of the rooting zone and wind-blown materials over the top. We often have stratified or layered soils.
It's been said that if one were to play God and create the world's most perfect viticultural region, it would look much like the Columbia Valley. Existing at the 45-degree northern latitude, coincidentally the same latitude as Bordeaux and Burgundy, it enjoys almost 2 hours of extra sunlight compared to California. The Olympic Mountains on the coast and the Cascade Mountains to the west of the valley create a rain shadow that protects us from cloud cover during the summer, rain during the harvest, and allows for optimal water management. The formation of the valley created high desert conditions with resultant high daytime temperatures for building sugars and cool nights for maintaining acids, allowing for the unique balance and structure of the Washington wines. Rare to the wine world is our lack of phylloxera. Due to planting on natural rootstock, we have wines with traditionally truer flavors. Washington's cold winters allow our vines to go dormant. When working with Andrei Chelichev, the legendary wine consultant, He would often tell me that he believed that this sleep of the vine allowed them to waken with greater vigor, and in the process create higher bouquets in the wine, just as it did with flowers in northern climates. Less easy to quantify is the combination of all these climatic and geographical conditions that allow Washington to enjoy this very long hang time. Cabernet frequently is not harvested till the end of October, sometimes even early November. I'm certainly biased, as I and a small group of investors have joined with the Denholt brothers in the ownership of the Lulu vineyard, but I believe that no vineyard exemplifies the uniqueness of the Columbia Valley as well as this 800-acre site. It's a critical source of the fruit that goes into Longshadows. Let's listen to Alan Shoup and Andy Denholt as they discuss the special formations of this vineyard.
We have huge deposits, as you well know, and you've seen in these canyons here of just hundreds of feet of pure gravel. And as I recall, a couple of years ago you came here and you could tell me exactly where these rocks came from, and it was just amazing because they traveled hundreds and hundreds of miles.
Some of those boulders and cobbles that you have here on the vineyard, they might have been trapped up in glaciers as part of Lake Missoula or in icebergs and got torn away when the ice dam went away and the floods started. Those icebergs would have melted out, leaving those gravels behind, and there they are today to tell us about that. Missoula Floods came through here. They peeled back the layers of the Columbia River basalt, the bedrock lava flows here, and the floods just exploited the weakness in those lavas and created all of these benches that we have in this landscape and that we can see across the canyon.
You've now learned a little bit more about the Columbia Valley, and hopefully have already tasted some of the wines of Longshadows. But to really understand and appreciate the wines of the Columbia Valley, you have to see it firsthand. Please be our guest. We look forward to greeting you soon. Thank you.